welcome to Season 10, Episode 30 of the Ubuntu podcast. We're back, and in this episode, we're going to discuss publicly drinking your own champagne. We'll also have some command line love and go over your feedback. I'm Mark, and joining me this week are the well-known splitters, Alan and Martin.
All right.
Hello.
So you've been swanning off around the world and moonlighting on other podcasts, I understand.
Yes, we
Maybe.
have. Are we
International
forgiven?
jet setters, yes.
Well, so Martin, what have you been up to?
Well, whilst I haven't been appearing on other podcasts, I have been to a Formula One racing sim centre and had a Formula One simulation race at the weekend, yeah.
I don't suppose you enjoyed that then?
I absolutely loved it. It was the best thing ever.
Did they by any chance have driving games there?
It was driving games. It was exclusively driving games. It was all the driving games. So this is a place called Let's Race in Hawley in Surrey in England.
Oh, yeah.
And to give you a geographical reference point, it's right next to Gatwick Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this large room that has 10 Formula One car bodies, which are mounted on a bunch of servos and hydraulics.
Oh, right.
And you get in the car, properly reclined. You have the brake and accelerator pedal adjusted to your leg length. You then get the steering wheel attached, so then you can't get out. And there's sort of 3 monitors that sort of are in panorama around you. And then they run a simulation, and you and 9 of your friends can go through practice and qualifying and a half-hour Formula One sim race. And it's epic.
Excellent. How did you do?
Made all the more epic by the fact that I won. I victoriously crushed all my friends.
So do you have 9 fewer friends?
I have
now?
9 fewer friends now, yes. Although I did buy drinks and beers and stuff when we got back home, so okay. I think it's all fine. But there is talk of them going without me next time.
Oh, you were that far ahead then?
I wasn't actually that far ahead, no. I did lap somebody 8 times, but...
Having recently had my arse handed to me on a plate by Martin playing Street Fighter in a bar in Paris, yes, I can see why your friends don't want to spend time with you.
Oh, so Alan, other than losing at Street Fighter, what have you been up to?
I thought I'd have a go at learning Go.
You'd had a go at Go?
I'd have a go at Go because I've been looking at it from the perspective of looking at snapping applications, and so I'm looking at lots of different applications, and I see how flexible it is, and I think, yeah, that would be quick. I should learn this language, and then I could use it for the next thing that I want to make instead of, creating a rubbish shell script or a Python program. I could make a self-contained little executable all on its own and do it in Go. And it looks quite interesting, and I've been following a bunch of tutorials. I haven't got very far because I haven't had a huge amount of time on it. But I've downloaded a bunch of tutorials, and I've got a long flight coming up, so I think I'll sit and watch some on the next flight.
Yeah, so there was a talk about Go at my local PHP user group, interestingly. And yeah, it's really interesting features of the language, and also, the fact that, compile all of your bits into a binary and run it rather than having to do dependency management and so forth. And
part of this process was not only discovering Go, but I discovered a couple of new IDEs to me. Like, I've been using Atom, I've mentioned before, quite a lot, but I followed some tutorial where the guy was using some extensions in Visual Studio Code. And I thought, well, let's see what that's like. So I tried VS Code. Oh my gosh, that's a really, really nice IDE. It's a really nice editor. I just hadn't looked at it, and I installed it. It's in a snap, but there's other ways to install it as well. But I've got a voyage of discovery, not only on the language, but new editors. And I've also been trying one called Golang, which is a bit of a weird name for an application.
The IntelliJ one.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I tried that one as well. That's really nice as well.
Yeah, because we use the PHP one of that family at work, and it is brilliant.
Good. So what have you been up to then, Mark?
I have been moving and therefore decorating. And
have you stopped?
Yes, for now. We have the bedroom decorated and everything unpacked, and I've been playing with an endoscope to run network cables through our heating ducts.
I wondered what the endoscope reference was for. Brilliant. Very good.
Yes, so lots of good fun. I've got a few server issues at the moment that I've still got to sort out, but other than that, it's all gone very well.
Sorry, you say you're moving house and you've got server issues. Many people, normal people, would see these as two independent things, but I guess they're related somehow.
Sort of. I mean, they didn't. Yeah, I mean, setting up the network's been a bit complicated because different equipment from our ISP, because I'm now using cable rather than
ADSL,
VDSL, whatever it was before, and then getting everything networked in the right place and running the cables
I know,
the right
drama,
length,
isn't it?
And then having everything still talking to each other and not shutting itself down because it can't see something it's expecting to see. So that's been fun, but I'm nearly there.
Awesome. Should we get on with it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So in this segment that we have titled Publicly Drinking Your Own Champagne, we've been influenced by the recent situation where Jim Zemlin from the Linux Foundation proclaimed the year of the Linux desktop while presenting from a Mac, which caused much furore and gnashing of teeth around the tech press. And what we're going to be discussing is how far should you go with your credibility when you're advocating for technology and products that you're responsible for. So first of all, I suppose we should address how we feel about Jim using a Mac to present at the...
So
everyone uses Macs to present, right?
Yeah, it feels that way when you go and this has been a meme, and we've mentioned this for years now. You go to tech events and if you look at the laptops that are open, there's a glow coming from many of them. The Apple logo, so it's pretty easy to spot. And some would say, yeah, but they might be running Linux, right? Well, the fact is, many of them aren't, and so there are a lot of people out there who are using Macs now. Some of those people will be buying them or having them because their employer provided them, or they chose it because they like the hardware or whatever reason. But the difference with this news story, which actually dates a couple of weeks ago as you listen to this, is the guy concerned is a figurehead. You know, he's a person who represents the Linux Foundation, which sponsors development of Linux. I think that's what got people's backs up. I mean, the joke, the quip about Year of the Linux Desktop, everyone says that, and it's a stupid joke that everyone says. But I think it's the juxtaposition of him saying that and then doing something else.
Yes. Now,
that irritated.
I've seen that some people who've commented on this, in the tech press and elsewhere, were kind of suggesting that, well, he should be using a Linux desktop, what we would recognize as a Linux desktop, Fedora Workstation or Ubuntu or, something better than that, probably with Mate in the name, I don't know. But given that Jim represents the Linux Foundation, which is essentially a trade body, a trade association for Linux, I'm not sure that actually that association with the Linux kernel and what enthusiasts know as the Linux desktop necessarily stands. And would he have been fine to use a Chromebook? Something that the Linux Foundation have promoted in the past when they've given them away with course subscriptions. And if you go and look at their requirements for doing the online learning, they recommend a Chromebook as a means to complete it. Obviously, runs the Linux kernel, which is really all the Linux Foundation cares about. Gross oversimplification there. So what do you think? If he'd have used a Chromebook, would that have been okay?
I think there would have been less, let's say, Mickey taking of the situation, because then it would be quite clearly he's using a Linux device of some description, albeit with... it depends on, I suppose, what you see him as representing, because like you say, the Linux Foundation is essentially a trade body. It's not necessarily there as primarily an advocacy organization. It's there to support the development of Linux and the use of Linux.
I looked at a couple of his previous videos, and one of them, he was giving like a keynote, and there were lots of logos on the screen. And I think these are either, I didn't look into it in huge detail, but I looked at all of the logos and I thought, these are all IoT, automotive, IVI. They're all embedded systems or server cloud type services. There was not a single desktop related project on the screen that he was presenting. I mean, he was talking about, Linux and how successful it is in these various areas, but it wasn't. So you would be forgiven for thinking, Linux on the desktop is not a thing that he particularly, or they, or he particularly care about. So why would he? Like, why should he do that? If his trade body is all about stuff that happens on the server, stuff that happens in the cloud, why should he run a desktop? Like, that makes no sense.
So what about how we approach this? Because, I mean, you guys in your job are often going and talking to people about stuff which might not necessarily be a desktop focused discussion. You might be talking about, building snaps to deploy in the cloud or other sort of, I mean, a lot of Ubuntu's business is around servers and the cloud and IoT and stuff like that. But is your approach when you're going into that situation and talking to people about those technologies, would you make a point of using a Linux machine and something that's visibly a Linux or particularly Ubuntu desktop when you're talking about that?
I think as a byproduct of the fact that all my machines run Linux means I will.
Well, so not all of them.
Well, all the machines that I can carry do. Like, I'm not going to take my desktop or my Xbox 360 and give a presentation from it, but every other machine that's got a VGA connector or an HDMI connector that is possible for me to give a presentation from is running Linux of some kind, right? So as a byproduct of that, of course it is. And I don't sit there at home and think, right, what laptop shall I take and which operating system shall I boot into? It's just automatic because that's what I do, right? And last week I gave a presentation at Ubucon and I just plugged my laptop in and it obviously it was running Ubuntu. You've had MacBooks in the past, haven't you? Yeah, I had a MacBook Pro and it ran Linux. I put Ubuntu on it.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it did have OS 10 at some point. I think I dual booted at some point, but it's so long ago I can't. Yeah, I think I dual booted at some time, but most of the time it spent its time in Linux. But it wasn't an optimal experience. Linux on Apple hardware is never really super. I mean, it's okay, and it gets better over time, especially with models that are like 4 years old or something. But it's never great.
And did you do that to make a point about the fact that you were running Linux on it, or did you do that because?
What, on my Mac or last
on your
week?
Mac? On your Mac.
Well, because I wanted to run Ubuntu and I liked the look of the hardware.
Right.
And I can see why some people, like, it's a scale, isn't it? Because some people will say, oh, you're running OS 10. That makes you a terrible person, a terrible advocate. Others would say, well, you bought an Apple product. That makes you a terrible person. Even if you're running the latest version of Fedora and you file bugs and you do patches and you do all the advocacy things and you do all the right, community contributor things, the fact that you gave money to Apple makes you a bad person, right? And that's it. And that's where I get on this is it's about perception. And the whole thing with Jim Zemlin is it's perception. It's the fact that you can say Linux is great, but I'm not using it. You should, but I'm not going to because I've got a Mac.
Yeah. So when I joined Canonical, the company advises that you run, Ubuntu and you encrypt the hard disk and various other things. And I very dutifully did that. And I ran proper Ubuntu, stock Ubuntu on all of my computers because I just joined the Ubuntu desktop team and I didn't feel that I would be contributing wholly to the efforts of the desktop team if I was running Ubuntu Mate, which is like my passion project on the side. So I completely went all in on running Ubuntu because I felt that was the responsible thing to do to represent the team that I worked for. Yeah. Now, just like Alan, I don't have to think about what computer I'm taking with me and what it runs because all of my portable equipment runs a flavour of Linux.
But I do remember you telling me that you've got a special wowing the Mac developers laptop, haven't you?
I do. So I specifically got an HP Spectre 13, which is a very thin and, in the eye of the beholder, attractive laptop that's sort of chocolate brown and copper in colour. And I deliberately use that when I go to talks where I know the crowd is mostly going to be developers using macOS, because it puts an end to all of the comments about her running Ubuntu on a clunker old ThinkPad and all the rest of it. And I do run Ubuntu Mate on that laptop deliberately with the Cupertino layout so it looks like macOS. Deliberately to sort of knock them off on the back foot.
But part of me thinks, why should we care? Like, about these people, you could argue some of these people are the peanut gallery who, some of them don't contribute in any meaningful way to the open source corpus. They're just there to throw rocks and be negative nannies and not actually do anything other than shout other people down. Like, do you not feel like the message that you're trying to give is, here's some content that I'm trying to do. Here's a presentation that I'm trying to deliver. Look at the slides and listen to me talk. Don't focus too much about the stack of software that's on the laptop that's making these slides appear in front of your eyes. The important thing is the message that I'm trying to convey. Like I said, the problem is it's perception. And the first thing they see when you plug your screen in is either the Windows desktop or the fruit salad of Ubuntu, or your green Ubuntu Mate, or they see a Mac dialogue where someone's trying in vain to drag the window into another display, right? And that first thing that they see is often part of the message that they take away. And I think that's, if he'd gone up on stage and his laptop was already plugged in and the projector was connected and everything was done, and all he did is just flick through the slides and nobody caught wind of the fact that it was a Mac, this would be a non-event, and people probably actually wouldn't be talking about Jim Zemlin at all, and the content of his thing wouldn't be interesting at all to anyone. It's only the fact that he did it from a Mac that anyone cares about what he said that day.
Yeah. But, if you're the leader of any organization, if you publicly associate yourselves with competitors' products,
right,
that's kind of an own goal.
Sure. And I remember seeing, when we were working on Ubuntu Phone, Mark Shuttleworth posting photos of his dogs and his bees and whatever on Google Plus, and people look at the metadata and said, "Oh, you're using an iPhone. Don't you want to use Ubuntu Phone?" And so, yeah, I've seen that firsthand within our own organization. It happens.
And there was a thing about designers at Canonical designing on Macs as well at one point.
Right, and they still do. Because they're using the in inverted commas, the right tool for the job from their perspective. If you walk around the Canonical office today, the vast majority of machines you see are random laptops and desktops all running Ubuntu. You see the Ubuntu desktop everywhere, except for the design team, or certain people in the design team who use OS X because there's software on OS X that they use. But then it goes to what's the most effective tool for the job? Is it more effective to find people who can use GIMP, or do you want designers who can use Adobe Illustrator? And we've discussed this point in the past. It's you want the best people doing the best job with the best tools, right? Mm. And if the best tool for the best person is Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever, then so be it, right? The net result is that millions of dollars have been poured into open source development, and the product of those millions of dollars, and yes, they've had to use proprietary software and stuff from Apple and stuff from Adobe along the way. The net result is the output you get at the end. And the output you get at the end is an ISO image that's freely downloadable that anyone can install on any computer.
Mm. So earlier on, you touched on negative nannies, which I think is an overly polite term for the people that post toxic and poisonous comments in various online forums and social networks. and what I'm interested to know is, does all of this effort for people advocating in the best way possible for Linux and the Linux desktop or whatever project it is that they're committed to, does that stand for anything when there are so many people out there who effectively look like they're representing the Linux community because they're commenting in Linux communities online and being rude and terse and poisonous and toxic, and leaving comments that, you know, really don't shine a favourable light on Linux?
Yeah, but you get that in every community.
Do you?
Like, yeah, totally.
To the same extent.
Name a community. Name any community, and I guarantee you'll get them. Like car enthusiasts.
Okay, car enthusiasts.
Right? You'll get people who are hateful towards BMW drivers. You'll get people who are hateful towards Volvo drivers. People who think anyone who drives a Subaru is a stupid farmer or a ricer. Like, there's, people have these preconceptions and perceived ideas about the other, the other community, and the people who like something different from me, that happens everywhere. It's worse in Linux because it's an online community and everyone is perceived to have a voice for some reason.
Are Windows and Mac OS users also impolite to one another when they're talking on their
even now, 2017, you still get Windows people taking the mick out of Mac users because they have a one-button mouse.
No. I'm not talking about across those things. I'm talking within the Mac OS communities. Are they rude to one another?
How about in the gaming community? If you look on like Steam forums and stuff like that, people are just what I'm trying to ridiculous.
Do is, like, with cars, you have different allegiances to makes and models of cars. Yeah. Okay, and with games, you have different allegiances to genres and particular games and all the rest of it, and platforms. Yeah. But if you have all of these Windows users in the various Windows online communities, are they horrible to one another? Have
you ever played an online game where you're matched up on a team with random people?
I want to get away from games because I think there's too much opportunity for people to be pitted against each other deliberately by the very fact that it's a game and it's competitive.
But I've played games where I've been on the same platform playing the same game which people have chosen to play, and all they spend their time doing is insulting each other and telling each other how bad they are at the game, rather than actually playing it and enjoying themselves. And it's
But I think to get away from that example that Martin wanted to do, what about the customer supplier example? Like the users of the product, like dogpiling on games when a developer does something that they perceive is bad, whether that's, adding DLC or paid content or whatever. In all of these online communities, you get the toxic people. And sure enough, people are entitled to their opinion, but I'm not obliged to listen to your opinion. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We've kind of deviated off the point a little bit.
We have a bit.
Sorry.
And just to like rein it back, I think it's a sliding scale. I think you have people at one end who are, pretty tolerant and accepting and pragmatic and maybe even run non-free software themselves. And then you've got the Stormanites at the other end, and there's a sliding scale in between. And you can't keep all of those people happy. And I don't think there is a solution to this. Yes, maybe it was thoughtless of Jim to use a Mac. Maybe he could have just used a Fedora workstation just to do the presentation or something. It would have looked better. I think he just didn't think anyone would pick up on that. And I'm surprised that the press have. I mean, there's only a couple of people who really went nuts about it. But I don't know. It just feels like there's bigger things to worry about in the world. And while, yes, we all should do our best to promote the product that we're developing, whether that's a piece of software or a platform or whatever, if someone makes a conscious choice to not use it for whatever reason because they like the hardware or their employer paid for the thing for them, then so be it. Leave it up to them. It's their life. They're the person who's got to live with it. You don't have to administer Jim Zemlin's Mac. It's not your responsibility. Like, let the guy live and use what he wants. I still keep coming back to its perception. It's the message that was seen by him doing that.
Yeah.
It's not him doing it is the problem. It's the perception of, what do you think?
I think generally I agree with you, but I think we've probably also run out of time. So maybe we should ask the listeners what they think.
Yeah, I agree. So you know how to get in touch with us. It's everywhere. I'm sure Laura will tell us very shortly.
If you love the command line as much as we do, send us a command that will blow our minds, and we might even mention it on the show. Send your command line love to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
It's time for some command line love that Laura there was speaking about. And I learned this one today because I'm running Ubuntu 17.10, not OS 10, on one of my laptops, my ThinkPad. And I've had it on there for a while. And 17.10 has changed over time. Things like the theme has been changed and some of the defaults have changed. And things were looking a little bit wrong. And so I mentioned to Didier Roche, who works on the desktop team, hey, this thing seems to not be working properly. And he said, well, I said, can I reset my session to like the defaults? I was considering deleting my entire home directory and starting all over again. But I thought that was a bit extreme. And he said, yes, there is a way to do it. And it uses a tool called Decomp, D-C-O-N-F. And there's a parameter called reset. If you use decomp reset, and then there's a -F, I think means force, I guess. And then a slash. So decomp reset -F slash. And that resets all the G settings keys, which are, it's a bit like a Windows registry. All the little keys that set things like the keyboard shortcuts, what applications appear in the launcher, and all kinds of other default settings. And it just resets them back to factory settings. And so, things that appeared to be broken magically started working. I just logged out, logged back in again, and it was all fixed. It was great.
So does this specifically how you do it for Unity, or does it work on other desktops?
I'm not running Unity because I'm on 17.10 and we're on Ubuntu GNOME now.
Okay, so is this specifically for GNOME 3 or does it work on other
It's specifically for desktops that use G settings, I believe.
That's right.
Which GNOME does.
And so does Mate, for example.
There you
And
go.
so does Unity. Now, also, that reset command, as you say, is like wipe everything, reset it to defaults. And there's also Decomp Dump and Decomp Load. And what you can do there is you could dump all of your settings once you've got everything set up the way you like it and take it to another machine and then do a Decomp Load and load those settings in. So you could move your settings from one computer to another. Or if there's just like particular applications or particular settings, instead of using / which says, the root of the settings, you can actually say like org gnome desktop, for example, and just like take specific bits. And I use this technique to have like a roaming profile. So I dump specific areas of the configuration, and then on other machines I reload those so that I carry the same configs across all my machines. It's really nifty.
Sweet. So thank you, Didier Roche, for that command line love.
There's always room for more feedback. On our website, each episode has its own comments, so post yours on ubuntupodcast.org.
And here it is. It's now time for all your wonderful feedback. Ryan Warnock emailed us at show@ubuntupodcast.org.
Hey there. I just wanted to say thanks for considering my poem in the competition. You did a good job at reading it. I know it doesn't really flow so well. Need to work on my English, but you made it work. Smiley face.
What
Thanks
does that
very
say
much.
about our English?
Yeah. And my ability to read large volumes of text off the screen. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan.
At Lemon Anyway tweeted at Ubuntu Podcast.
KDE Mobile is still doing stuff. And a link to the announcement about KDE on the Purism Librem 5 phone.
Ooh.
Did we talk about this particular device? Well, we talked about it on last week when we were at UbuCon Paris, didn't we?
I thought you might have done.
Yes, we did. Didn't their crowdfunder spike up when KDE made this announcement?
Depends on your definition of spike.
Oh, meow.
Well, no, I have a graph. I've been tracking the crowdfunder, and it kind of spiked a little bit, but not tremendously. Not like it didn't leap up by a tremendous amount. So no, is a short answer.
Okay. But KDE looks like they're still committed to their mobile platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems that way.
Yep, excellent. Ivan Pejic emailed us.
Hello, folks. In regards to my Entroware competition entry, so Ivan entered the competition and sadly did not win. He followed up with, this is made as a self-evident form of steganography. It was inspired by a woman in World War II who carried messages behind enemy lines by knitting binary messages into garments. So the mechanics go, make an audio, choose sufficient compression to have nice quality but not too many bytes of data. In Inkscape, make a vector-based Ubuntu podcast logo using black, white, and grey. Convert that vector logo to bitmap while double-checking I have enough grey pixels to hold audio data. Choose an 18-colour palette that fits Ubuntu branding. Take the bitmap logo. Skip white and black. Replace grey pixels with pixels from the palette by encoding the audio data. And to decode, just do the same in reverse. Take the pixels that are not black or white, look in the palette for corresponding letters, knowing that letters are used in base 18, calculate original values. I hope this explains how I did it. It totally does, and I don't fully understand it, I have to say, but it does, it's fantastic.
The bit I completely didn't understand was about skipping the white and black bit. I didn't understand how you had gaps in the image but not gaps in the audio, so this helps me a lot.
Right, gotcha.
And also, yes, steganography.
Oh, yeah, we said stenography, didn't we? Which apparently is something completely different.
Yes, I apologise. Thank you for all the corrections. Charlie Brown, AU, emailed us.
Good day. Love your podcast. I recently went from Windows 7 to Linux. First went to Mint, then Ubuntu Mate 1604. Now I'm using Debian 9.1 Mate. I have an issue with an R9 380 graphics card and Linux. And he sent us some other details, but we would recommend that you post your question on askubuntu.org.
I would recommend not. If he's running Debian 9, then don't do that.
He's not running Ubuntu anymore, so we can't help him. Is there an Ask Debian?
Reinstall Ubuntu, then go to Ask Ubuntu and ask the same question. If the problem only happens in Debian and doesn't happen in Ubuntu, if it happens in Ubuntu, then sure, go to Ask Ubuntu and ask a question, and then you've got a solution for both. But if it only happens in Debian, then you need to find the Debian support place, wherever that may be. Yes.
Or keep using Ubuntu because it works with your hardware, and that's what makes Ubuntu great.
DMiller309 posted on our subreddit /r Ubuntu podcast.
Would it be viable for Canonical to have a Patreon for the main Ubuntu desktop like Mate does? I'm subscribed to a few Linux Patreons and I like the platform. My computer came with Ubuntu pre-installed, but I can't say that I've ever used the donate button on the Ubuntu website. This is an interesting question, and I can see a couple of problems with this. The first one is generally Patreon is used for content creators and people who can crank out something on a regular basis. I know there are like distro like Mate and others that fund via that method, but they don't really have like regular output. You might have some perks like access to a back channel like support thing, or early access to news and stuff. I don't know what we would do that would be a perk for a patron.
It's tricky. So what we do in Ubuntu Mate is we try and do all of the alpha and beta milestones. So that means during the 6-month development period, there are 5 releases. So there's like a month where there's 2 months in the year where there are no releases, and then the rest of the months in the year you should have some sort of release to play with, being an alpha or a beta. And then, as you say, early access to news and stuff. But yes, that doesn't translate very well to Ubuntu, which participates in just the final betas and the final releases, which would be just 4 releases a year.
However, I will bring it up because we're always interested in hearing novel and interesting ways in which we can fund development of Ubuntu. So I will put that on a to-do list, and I will speak to the necessary people in Canonical and figure out if it is something we could do and whether it would be viable. So thank you for the suggestion, DMiller309.
Awesome.
And that's the end of the news.
No, it isn't.
I don't think we could have got that much more wrong than we did.
Do you want to try that again?
Whatever.
That's all for episode something. No.
Yeah, go on, do it again. So we'll just pretend that didn't happen.
Okay.
And that's all of the feedback.
That's all for episode 30. We'll be back next week when we'll have more news, comment, and discussion.
Awesome. And next week, Martin and I will have come back from the rally in New York City, so we'll have some feedback from there as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, everyone, for listening and all your feedback.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Yes. Bye.
Don't be a negative nanny.